Okay, we did it. We hit record. I am really excited to be here with three of my most favorite people in the whole world to talk about the Enneagram Type Six. To sort of create this space to share perspective from each of you. My husband is already laughing at me.
I'm sorry, it's one of those things where you're not supposed to be silly, and I'm having a hard time not laughing.
You can be silly. You're just, distracting me. But I guess that's what I get for having my husband join me. But I'm super excited to create a space for folks to get to witness, type in the sort of living moment as a way to learn new perspective and maybe even identify. So I have my husband and two of my closest friends in the world here who all happen to be type sixes. Who would have thunk? Willing to share their perspectives and their stories and how six sort of integrates into their lives. So thank you all for being here. I love you all dearly. And I would like to let you all take a moment to introduce yourselves. Name, type, where you're from, what you do, anything else relevant. And we can go in any order. Who's up?
Go ahead, Dave.
Go first.
Go, Dave. You're up, Dave.
My name is Dave. I am married to the most incredible woman on earth.
Oh,
she's on the screen right over here. Over here. Whoa. I'm a counterphobic 6, and I work in law enforcement.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Nice butter up.
I'll go. I'm Meredith. I am a social 6, and I am an HR manager in the healthcare industry.
Thank you, Meredith.
And I'm Carrie. I am a phobic 6, self-pres with a 5 wing. And I work in the healthcare industry with and doing marketing, communications, and talent development. And I have the pleasure of working with Meredith.
So collectively, if you add up all of the time we've known each other, we're like pushing on 4 decades. So it's pretty fun to think about how long I've known all of you and then how long we've all known each other. So it's a lot of fun.
And you guys are my favorite friends of Erin, by the way. I'm not just saying that.
I guess you're our favorite husband of hers.
Right.
That's kind of creepy.
Well, you can even say he's your favorite Dave.
I better be your favorite.
You're my favorite Dave, so there you go.
Or you better be telling me something.
All right, I love you all. Tell me what it was like for you to first sort of identify with your Enneagram type. Was it a good experience? Was it not a good experience? Did you identify with 6 initially? How it came to be, all of that, whatever you feel like sharing.
So I was in denial. I didn't want to believe that I was a 6. So I wanted her to maybe do it again, or that she possibly was wrong. Surprise.
So we did a typing interview, right?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. And I thought that being a 6 was horrible because of the 6 who was in our department at the time, because we all worked together, and who was in our department at the time. And I did not like him at all. And so I did not want to be associated with anything remotely relative to him.
Mm-hmm. And how long did it take you to connect to it, or when did you connect to it, right? Like, what was that like for you?
I think it probably took a minute before I connected to that. You're laughing because no, but yes, it did. It took a minute for me to for it to resonate with me. But then once it did, then it made sense. The more I became familiar with the type and the characteristics of the type, then it just made more sense that yes, I am in fact a 6, no doubt.
Well, and the individual you're talking about was a relational 6. and you identified most with the social six. And so like sort of piecing apart that nuance, I think is helpful because you know, sort of outwardly, you and that person were like nothing alike, right? Behaviorally.
Sure.
So I can see the
Sure. And he was just
also,
an unhealthy person. He was just an unhealthy person to be around. So not to say anything about the other types of sixes either. I think it was his own unhealthy character.
Sure. And I think that's true for the typing process in general is, and maybe this feels true for you guys as sixes, but when it's sort of like, let's put you in a box and sort of limit that box, it can sort of narrow down how comfortable I am being compared to somebody else's behaviors, when really it's about sort of internally what's true for you. So, yeah, I'm thinking we're gonna have a theme with type, the typing process. Carrie, tell us about yours. I'm familiar with it, but
yeah. So when I first learned about the Enneagram in a workshop, and we kind of did the exercise, and you kind of self-identified where you landed, and then kind of ran through it with the instructors. And so I got typed as a 9 and just had an adverse reaction to it. And there's nothing wrong with being a 9. There was just qualities of it, and it just didn't sit well. And so I was like, this is all hooey. Like, I don't believe in this. This is not, and even to the point they were like, come back and like learn more. And I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm out.
So I got asked to come back and be part of a typing interview for the class that was learning everything. And so I sat in front of the interviewer, who did a lovely job. And then there was a whole table of people around just staring at me. So of course it's kind of like this. I start sweating. I'm like, under the spotlight. And of course, like within I think the second question, I was already in tears, and just feeling super exposed.
Yes.
And really not, just
you exposed yourself.
This stuff.
Hey.
So I landed at a type 6, and once they kind of dug into that, and then I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you guys. And then I was like, how did you do that? Like, how do you know my most inner thoughts that have never really come out? And how can you peg me that, easily? So then I was like, okay, then there's something to this. So, but it took me a while, even after that, to kind of dig back in, but it all makes sense.
Your experience, Carrie, was such a grounding lesson for me in what it's like for people to just lay a type on somebody when they haven't sort of invested the time or the process, like how painful that experience can be when you're sort of misrepresented, right? And I think that's part of this process for a lot of us, is putting language to patterns that feel good, or skills that we have, or gifts, and then language to patterns that are hard. And so when you sort of wash over me or ignore me or don't see me or name my patterns well, like that was like 11 years ago that happened. And I was one of those people in the room, and it just really sort of grounded for me ethically, like how to do this work well, to make sure people are really cared for. So I appreciate you telling that story, because it's something I think about every time I engage in a typing process with somebody, because it's really ultimately the individual's job to tell what their type is.
Right.
So thank you. Dave.
All right, Dave.
All right.
Your turn.
Well, it's interesting for me because I've been here when she first started with her journey with the Enneagram. And we talked about it off and on. I never took it seriously at all at the beginning. Like, I went from being a 2, and then we were together longer, and she was like, oh my God, no.
No, 1. One.
Oh, it was a 1, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, so the 1, and then she kept on talking about, you're a 1, it's like, okay, I'll read this stuff. What are you trying to tell me here? Because she took it seriously enough that I took it seriously enough to look into it. And she had me read the 1, and a lot of the stuff resonated. And then I read some of the 8, And then a lot of that stuff resonated, but there were some key factors in the 8 that I was like, no, that's not me at all. So after that, I was like, well, I think Ouija boards are stupid anyway, so this is not going to define me. But no, that wasn't the end. She made me think about it, and we talked and talked over and over again. We talked about the 6. There's some aspects of the 6, like at its, the social and the relational I got it mixed up, the social and the phobic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's not me either, because I don't have that baseline of like fear of everything. And then she read the counterphobic 6, and I was like, oh crap.
Huh.
And I was like, wow. I was impressed. I wasn't worried about it. It's just a number. But the more and more I researched it and talked with her about it, made, about motivations and why you do things, and it struck home a lot. Mm-hmm. And made you think.
Well, and you're right. You and I started about the same time. I started studying the Enneagram, and so I did a lot of like practice typing interviews. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing Dave. We actually pulled out his interview sheet not too long ago to look at it, and I was like, wow, I've come a long way, like what I do. Yes. But it was really like sort of tied in 6 and 1. And I didn't know enough to ask, good questions. I hadn't seen enough things. And so it was a really awesome practice to really figure out truth behind behavior, because you do embody parts of 1 or 8 in your sort of counterphobic 6ness. So yeah, I love having all of your sort of instinctual patterns represented too, because I'm hoping it shows nuance. You're some of the most loyal, committed, steady people I know. Like, no questions asked, I'm gonna show up for you. Yet you're still really different in how you move in the world. So I think it's pretty neat to see. So I wanted to just give a framework of the 6 for folks who maybe don't have a lot of, sort of access or understanding of it, and then give you a chance to sort of reflect on what feels most in line with you and how you move in the world, or how you see it show up for you. And I want you to talk about both the gifts of your type as well as the challenges. I know all of us have a sort of a tendency to go to the things maybe I, don't love about type. So I'd like you to think about both sides of it. Because my personal opinion after, almost 20 years in business is every business team should have a 6 on it, just for the safety's sake. So yep. I definitely connect to the gifts more than I think, might come out. So when we think about 6, we think about it through the lens of fear. That's the sort of traditional worldview. And fear has a lot of manifestations. It can look like worry or self-doubt or anxiety or questioning or seeking certainty, wanting all of the information or the data, or in Dave's case, in this like sort of relational aspect, and Carrie and Meredith, you carry that too, right? Like there are moments where this shows up for you. It's the creating a good offense, being so prepared that I'm on the ready for action. Which can look more direct and sometimes even more bullish than you might see in sort of the traditional fear worldview. And we can see the instinctual responses to fear, the fight, flight, or freeze, represented really nicely in the self-preservation, social, and relational versions of 6, these 3 instincts, that when you marry these instinctual patterns with worldview of fear, you get subtype, right? And we each sort of identify with a dominant subtype, which then in turn lends to a way in which we problem solve, a place we go, again, instinctually to get our needs met. It doesn't mean we don't have the capacity for more. We absolutely do. That's why we're here in these spaces, to help people sort of expand capacity, but it gives us an understanding and language around what I'm doing right now, in my sort of most pinched state. So the self-preservation 6 tends to be the flight of fight, flight, or freeze, sort of the internal resourcing, making sure that I'm okay so that I can, be in the world okay, the sort of sense of self. Where the social 6 tends to be the freeze of fight, flight, or freeze, where it's like, oh, hey, I need a good authority or community or rules or something to sort of like, get me loosey-goosey and moving again. And where the relational 6 is usually the fight of the fight, flight, or freeze, like I'm gonna maybe, strike first. I'm on a good ready. And so we can see these patterns, and they have a tendency to stack for us. We have a dominant, and then when that's sort of met and settled, we have a secondary that we can move into, and oftentimes we have one that's repressed or sort of our blind spot or pushed away. Through consciousness work and awareness and paying attention and noticing, we can definitely bring in more of these instincts. I've seen moving from relational 7 to social 7, and I'm sort of eking into self-preservation in this stage of my growth and healing. So that's the work, is to see Carrie and Meredith and Dave and go, how do I find these in me? How do I find all of them in me? So for each of you, when you think about instinct, you think about, whether it's going inward or in terms of community or sort of being on a good offense, as well as how that sort of intersects with the worldview of fear. How do you guys resonate, or what feels most true, or how does it show up most often for you?
Wants to go first?
Nobody.
It sounds like you.
So ask that question again. Sorry.
What feels most true for you about sort of the patterns of 6 for you, and how does it show up in your life?
I mean, so just thinking about today, and like you guys are my people, but I still felt like I had to prepare, and it's just talking about myself, but I want to make sure that I represent the type well, which is just me, but there's still this anxiety and doubt of how well I will do. And so, I kind of just did like homework, which is weird to do homework on yourself and when you're talking to your friends, but that spotlight pressure gives me anxiety. So I kind of go back into the, how am I going to do this? So that kind of internal, which almost feels like a freeze to me, but I guess it is just kind of internalization, because there's something has to happen internally before there's any forward motion, especially so this was easy. But thinking about, work or life, there's a lot of internal movement that happens before I can make a decision or figure out what to do. I remember like almost putting myself into a panic attack trying to redo a bathroom because I just didn't, I'd never done it before. I didn't know where to start. I was going to, do it wrong and waste money. And so I just couldn't even like make a decision on a floor tile. So
why didn't you call me?
Oh, no.
I'm a great designer.
I'm sure, when I need something painted. So that shows up. And then a lot of it, I have like just recently just kind of get really attuned to my safety. That's a big thing. And so I self-doubt myself. Like, you should see me like every night before I go to sleep. I probably do 3 laps around my house just to make sure all the doors are locked. And I've done it. But I think when it really comes down to like me feeling safe, and I feel safe in my house, it's kind of my like little bubble against the world. I can come in and like retreat and be safe and, just relaxed here, but I have to make sure that it's secure. And so then there's a little self-doubt in that when it comes to my own personal safety.
And I think you did a beautiful job of illuminating the self-preservation quality, regardless of type, the sort of resourcing of self, right? So like the pulling back and making sure that I've got what I need to move forward, and spending the time making sure I have what I need, or, the literal components of my environmental space. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So
How
me,
about that?
Go Dave.
I wasn't worried at all about this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He was like, did you send
Let's do it.
questions?
It was more of me trying to not be myself on a fairly serious conversation. So to just, not goof off and everything. But I wasn't worried at all because you guys are all, in my trust tree. So I'm really not worried about it at all. And you guys are all in I think sixes look for authority a lot, and you guys are all, you're not like, how can I put it? You're not you're authorities in my life because I respect you and I view you as equals. So therefore I have no problem discussing things and being myself and trusting you. I have no trouble doing that. If I didn't know you guys the way I do, I would be a little more apprehensive about being myself and talking about stuff in front of you, as this is going to be shared with I don't know how many people.
I was just gonna say, you do know it's going on the internet, right?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, huh?
Right.
It's
I
just
think,
recording now.
So what you said is cool because I think self-praise in me is probably the bottom of the stack. I think certainly social, and I think that I can be, but I don't run toward, I don't know, because I doubt. So here I am doubting myself right now as I'm talking about it. Oh, surprise. But once I saw your faces and we got online and I saw Carrie, even before we hit record and we were just prepping, I felt better because I had my people. And that's where I get my jam, is being with my people. And so, before that, I was anxious and I was hot and I was walking around the house trying to figure out where the best spot was to sit and what's behind me, because I don't, weird about what's in my house, and people identify that and, come back and get me talking about the safety thing. And so just all those things in my head that I'll think about when this is over and it's time for me to go to bed tonight. I'll think of all these things over and over and over and over, and I won't be able to sleep probably thinking about it because that's who I am.
You need to have another glass of wine.
Probably.
So how does 6 show up for you in life or at work?
For me?
Dave, why don't you go?
Me? You say Dave?
Yeah, why don't you go?
6 actually really makes me in tune to do my job. I'm like I said, I don't have the baseline fear of everything. I'm not paranoid that something's going to happen to me. Do I think about things happening? Yeah, I do. That's how I prepare, though. And it's all about the preparedness and thinking about things before it happens. So when the time comes, then I'm ready for it. But I'm not afraid of what can happen. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's about in my job and in, outside of work, it's about missing something, but especially when I'm at work. Because if I miss something, bad things can happen. And that's what sticks in the back of my mind. So being thorough, preparing, utilizing all the tools that I have at my disposal and getting all the information that I can is what I do anyway. I try to, at least the best I can. But when I do that at work, I'll look at things on the computer, or I'll ask certain questions, and my coworkers will ask me where the heck how did you get to that point? How did you even get there? And that's just me not wanting to leave any stone unturned, because I'm worried about that last stone is the one that's going to get me. So I go after every stone to make sure that doesn't happen, because I don't want that feeling afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a nice reminder, Dave, that in all Enneagram subtype, when we sort of marry it with instinct, there's one that sort of acts in opposition. So the relational six is the counter type of six. So sort of going at the fear. And it can look different. It can be hard to type. That's where mistyping as 8 or 1 can be really common, because you can seem so certain and direct and clear, but it's motivated from a desire to not miss a stone, you know, versus like the I already know that this is right and I'm just going after it. So yeah, you can sort of see how anger or frustration or directness sort of trumps fear as a coping response. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Meredith or Carrie, how does it show up for you in life or work?
So I think in work, it helps me do what I do. I think it helps me take a look at the big picture and try to find the holes, ask all the questions to find the holes, to figure out what's going to happen before it happens so that I can keep it from happening, kind of in the same way that Dave wants to be prepared and wants to do it. But I think his is the counter fear. Mine is the fear of, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to be seen as incompetent. I don't want to be seen as one who doesn't know, or they're going to find out that I don't really belong here, that I'm not worthy. And you'd laugh because, you know, I struggle with that. But I am worthy, and I know that I should be here, and I know that I do a good job at my job, but that's kind of where it comes from. But it helps me to be good so that I can get that. And it helps me protect the organization that I work for, because I do ask the questions and because I do find the holes and try to get in front of them before they happen. So.
Totally.
And I really resonate with what you just said, because that's me 100%. I just don't worry about it as much as you probably do.
Yeah, but see, mine comes from, I don't want to let down my authority. Yours comes from, you know,
I don't want to make mistakes.
Authority.
You don't want to make mistakes. Yeah.
Dave's kind of like, what authority?
Right. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to find out I suck. I don't suck.
You don't.
Yeah, in our organization, like, you know, there's a hierarchical structure. So we look to, you know, our authority. I know I look for a good authority. And what I've realized kind of recently is, you know, thinking back, because there was a time where I was like, maybe I'm a 1. I'm doubting my type. Aaron's like, yeah, if you're doubting your type, you're a 6. You're fine. But there is that kind of black and whiteness of, for the 6, I think it's like good and bad. And so within, you know, minimal interaction, I kind of categorize people. I know everybody's good, but, you know, then there's those people that, you know, you're going to connect with, work well with. And then there's those other ones that it's almost a little bit of a fight. And so that kind of comes out. And so a lot of the work that I do every day is to kind of what, you know, same to what Meredith was talking about, show my competence, have the answer before you have the question, because there's a fear of not knowing. There's a fear of getting in trouble, you know, that's kind of always looming over here. So I know I work really, really hard to do things in a way that are not wrong. And it's not really to be right. It's just to keep working so I don't get called out for not knowing what I'm doing. You know, I'm a fraud. They're going to actually realize I don't know what I'm doing. So I work really hard. And sometimes I think that I can, you know, connect to 3 that I can do and do it really fast, just to show that there's worth in me. And sometimes I need that from an external authority versus internally.
And I like, what a great picture of sort of the seeking of the 6 around certainty, right? Sort of the clarity that certainty brings, enough information, you know, it all baked out, people that I can trust, that are predictable, that I know how hard they're going to work, like sort of all of those things create certainty because of the sort of coping pattern around feeling uncertain. So Carrie did a really beautiful job of saying, like, this is what I do externally to sort of combat the internal uncertainty. I remember, working alongside Carrie and Meredith for a long time, that when somebody would put a meeting invite on their calendar with like no context, that it's like, I'm getting fired. And I'm like, they're just...
You want to stress me out? We need to talk. Oh, I'm fired. I just lost my job.
Right.
Every time.
So funny, every time.
I remember I had a meeting late with somebody on our team, no bearing around like Carrie's employment status at all. And she's like, you were talking really late. Am I getting fired? I was like, oh my gosh, but it's such a grounding perspective to remember where somebody comes from, right? And it gave me so much grace working along and loving sixes in my life to remember. And I remember my therapist told me at one point, early, she was also a six. Clearly, I have a thing for sixes. She told me early on that if you don't want to reassure somebody, don't be in relationship with six. And I was like, oh, that feels really clear. It's that sort of never ending search for certainty requires the things that help feel more stable and secure. So if someone were to help, make you feel more secure, what would that look like at work, at home, in relationship, wherever it feels most relevant? What does making you feel more secure look like?
Give me all the details.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me I'm doing a good job, and you better be working right alongside me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I would also say, I have a lot security issues too, probably from the way I grew up, but I need to know that tomorrow, we're still going to be able to live in this house, and that we're still going to have the things that we have and be able to maintain those things. So maintenance versus repair is huge for me, with regards to our relationship, with regards to physical things. I think that is, the effort that you put into maintaining the relationship and building into me and helping to be present with me, and be real with me helps to build trust. And so when I learn to trust that, then I feel safe and secure. But really and truly with physical things, if there's something going on with the house, my husband will tell you, I will raise the mama eyebrow, I will nag a bit, and I will try not to, and he calls it giving him the customer service, but I don't give a damn. I want you to fix the thing, sir, and so really and truly that repair versus maintenance is huge to me. And so.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of that quality time to build connection, to build trust, that, and being just honest and authentic. We can spot somebody that's a little shady or somebody's withholding information. I think that's right when my like spidey senses go off, where then I go into, just hyperdrive of high alert. And that takes a lot of energy. So when you have that, connection, someone can spend time with you, it helps to alleviate that anxiety and that pressure just to, to find those holes and poke them. We're really good at finding them. We're good problem solvers. We're also really good problem finders. So that can sometimes
or problem makers.
Yes. Yep. We can get stuck. We can make a problem just so we have something to solve. So we build our own like competence. I see myself do that all the time.
Yeah, that's probably true.
When you work with somebody, you can, get little wins. That just helps. It kind of, we have to rely on ourselves for that internal, authority and competence. And then, but sometimes when people see that you're struggling, that person, that knows you and sees you to the core can, just either back off or just give us the time to ask the questions and, simmer down a little bit.
Or help us through it.
So what are your superpowers as a six?
Bullshit radars.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes me good at what I do.
Sir, would you like to talk about the extended warranty for your car? Oh, the warranty for my car, huh?
Can you
What kind
help
of
me
car?
understand? That's my
What kind of
favorite
car do I
question on the
have?
planet.
What's the make? What's the model? What year is it? Where do you live? What about your warranty?
Oh my gosh, Dave.
Can't stand those people.
I know.
And people fall for that.
No,
Yes. My favorite question is help me understand. So I think just that ability to ask questions, and then I'm okay in the silence, even if it's an awkward silence, until you can figure out what it is that, and that's me just trying to find out the truth, trying to seek the truth in whatever it is that's going on. And so whether it's my kids or work or the mail order pharmacy who won't refill my prescription because the manufacturer, and the young lady just couldn't verbalize it, that the manufacturer is out of whatever it takes to make this medicine and wouldn't do it. Can you help me understand the next steps? Like, can you help me? I asked that question 3 times. What's going on? Why is it going on? What are you going to do about it? And then what can I anticipate moving forward? Because this has never happened before. And the little girl was not ready.
Oh no.
I will have to say, Meredith, that is one of your gifts in this world, is how much space you create for people to sort of process and come forward, and like in your desire and seeking for clarity and truth, you also don't, like, from my perspective and my experience with you, you don't sort of put pressure on it either. So it doesn't feel like hurried or fabricated or created in a way. It's like, I can sit here. I can wait.
That's a superpower.
Yeah, it's
silences that you just let be. That's a superpower.
I love silences. That means you got them.
Yep. I love that. Exactly, Dave.
Because they're like, oh.
Maybe HR and law enforcement isn't that much different.
Maybe not.
You're still trying to figure out people's crap before you.
It's all that
take further
investigating.
steps.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then helping them figure out, what are you going to do about it, sir?
Yep.
You're either going to get it together or you're going to go work for our competitor and mess up their business. So
It's all good.
yeah.
Carrie, how about you? What's one of your superpowers?
I think just that kind of worst case scenario thinking, preparing for what could go wrong. So in a previous life, when I was an event planner, it just came real natural to me, and I was just kind of prepared for a little bit of the unknown. And you walk into an event, and I was like, I've got tampons, I got scissors, I've got an extra battery pack. Like, I just had like all the covered. Just in case something went wrong, I never wanted to be without a resource or without the solution. So I think we just naturally, because we're overthinkers, we can be a couple steps ahead of a situation, a person in a situation, because we are so hyper vigilant to kind of our surroundings and what could go wrong, that we are super planful and are kind of prepared for any situation. I think about like COVID. I was like, well, I already have food and water in the basement, so I'll just go add to it.
Right. At one point, I had 133 rolls of toilet paper.
So you're one of those people.
That is the God honest truth.
So I think that's kind of a cool, superpower. And even just being, we are, I think about the 8s. If you're kind of in the circle of a 6, you're in the trust circle. And so we are loyal and dedicated. And that's where we can kind of shed that, anxiety and fear-based, mentality, and kind of get to that, warm, loving nature of who we actually are with that, when the trust is there.
Yeah, because when you don't trust,
a real tenderness.
When you don't trust people, that's one of the few times you're not worried about not knowing all the things, because you're just like, they ask you questions and you're like, I don't know. And then that awkward silence kicks in.
And I'm okay with that too, because on the flip side of that, I can be very guarded, and I can be very slow to allow myself to open up and be vulnerable. if I don't feel safe in that space. So, you know, that same space that I can create, like you said, when I already know the answer to the question, but still allow that person to be, you know, fumbling around until they figure out what they're going to say. When they ask me a question, I can still be just as guarded and comfortable in that silence too.
Yeah.
Dave, what about you? What's your superpower?
Didn't I start the whole thing off?
I don't remember.
No, I just agreed with Meredith.
Oh.
The bullcrap radar, or was Carrie?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. I mean, call it, I don't know what your intuition, being good with people. I think that's my superpower, just reading people, reading situations, and being like, having that, like, for lack of a better term, that spidey sense to be like, you're or something's going to happen here. Or if they seem legit.
I think what I've always noticed with Dave, and probably with Meredith too, being social, but like Dave has never met a stranger. Like, you have no problem, like, work, personal life, like probably more in the personal life before you got into your current role. But, you know, you're just up talking to people. And it's probably a sense of like, I'm gonna like check these people out, but you're just kind of in their face, not in a bad way, but in that like social way, you know, not afraid of people, where I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
But, you know, you just make connection and, you know, have good conversations with anybody on that social level, which, so, you know, you're pretty, while you're kind of scary, you're pretty approachable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you get over like sort of the physical appearance of him, it's a duality for sure.
It's a little less of an issue because I've got like this discount double chin now that I can see so, you know.
You have a dad bod. It's beautiful.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. And the glasses now. I look like I should be installing your Wi-Fi for the Geek Squad rather than being on law enforcement.
Falling apart at such a young age.
I know.
That's all right. Let them step to you. They'll find out.
Keep them unassuming. That's how I'd rather
There you
have
go.
it.
Yep.
I will say though, Dave, like that's one of the things where your superpower has rubbed off on me. I remember when we were first sort of dating and together, I would get so annoyed at how he talked to every single person on earth. I was very like efficient and needed to use my time really wisely, and also was really tender and didn't like to be vulnerable and didn't like people looking at me or paying too close of attention to me for fear of, you know, rejection or the things that came up. And he literally would talk to every single human. And he really sort of taught me to slow down and to be rooted in like community and kindness and connection. And I am seriously a much nicer human being because of, you know, sort of that rubbing off on me. So yeah, the sort of the gift of the six, and I don't say this as a joke, although it is silly. Like, I do believe every team probably should have every type represented, but especially the six. When we live in sort of this pressure, performance-based, perfectionist corporate culture, even if you're not in corporate America, you know, it pushes you that way, that the six sort of is the folks actively hitting the brake, not just maybe pulling out of the mix, but hitting the brake and then also raising your hand and being like, hey, what about? And that has saved my rear end, like maybe my whole career. So what would be something that you would want people to know about you when type shows up for you in life?
Don't get annoyed by me, and you know, it's not that I'm not listening to you. I'm listening, but I just seek. And she's laughing right now.
Yes.
She gets annoyed with me. I seek, even though I know the answer to the question or have a good idea, I'll still ask again just for further clarification, just to, you know, put that extra screw in the drywall so it doesn't fall all down on you. So that's you know, that's how I operate. And she gets annoyed.
I forget that. I get caught in my own stuff. and my own need to, sort of control time perfectly. And it's a good reminder that you're seeking certainty so that you feel good about how you move forward. And I need to be reminded that.
I say trust and security are big for me. So if you create a space where I can feel safe to be me, I'll let down my guard. But if I don't feel safe enough to do that, if I don't feel like the ground is solid enough for that repair maintenance mentality that I have, or if I don't feel like I can be safe enough to be me, then I won't let my guard down, and it won't be comfortable for either one of us. Not intentionally trying to make it uncomfortable, but it'll just be weird.
Yeah.
I think we all I think everybody in general, but as sixes, we really want to kind of always do and be our best and do the best for others. And if that ever comes into question, that's where you're going to see not the best of us. To question a questioner is really hard.
Yeah.
So it can come out in there's some natural defensiveness. Which,
I don't get defensive.
No,
not at all.
Not at all.
Never seen it.
Yeah.
And so when that question comes from probably somebody that's not in the trust circle, or is, you haven't put them there, or they haven't put you there, we can probably all look a little bit like a counterphobic six, because, while I think about the authority that I have is sometimes waivers, or I put it on others, but there is a sense of authority in all the thinking that we do to make sure we're prepared or safe, secure, competent, doing well. And so when that comes under question, it's kind of, it can rock your world a little bit, because you're like, how did I not think of that? So I think that's one thing that catches me every once in a while, and that's something to work on.
I think too, once you get in that circle, there is a loyalty that is almost unwavering. Like, we will be there long after the dance is over. The streamers have come down off the wall. The janitor is trying to lock up the gym. We're still there. And so don't take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Carrie, you said something about how, as a six, really wanting to do your best, and, assuming most people want to do their best. And I think that's true. Like, I want to put myself forward, but my 7 worldview is very comfortable cutting corners. Like, I'm very comfortable rushing, and, Dave, you're taking too long on something, or we're turning the screw on it, or like, I'm very comfortable. And it was relationship with folks who slowed me down, working relationships, personal relationships, and taught me the value of the sort of detail and the follow through and the thoughtfulness and the asking the question. And so, you and I've worked together for, a really long time. I think 15 years almost that we've, been in relationship. And your ability to do your best all the time is part of what has taught me how to do my best. And not, yes, there's still times where I want to cut corners and drive Dave crazy, but so I so appreciate how it shows up, and the reminder, Meredith, to not take advantage of that.
You're welcome, Dave.
Right.
Yeah, she doesn't.
Go ahead, honey. Say the funny thing.
I'm not. It's not really funny. It's like a good example of that is like when you asked me to shop for like an appliance or something and I'm gonna go, well, what's it saying? Consumer Reports and
Consumer Reports.
Yeah. And I'm looking at all the specs, and I want testimonials from every person on earth that bought this thing. But
I picked the first one.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "That's good. What's taking you so long?" I'm like, I'm just trying to get something that's going to last for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And we somehow
she's
meet
just
in the
like,
middle.
she's just like, do the damn thing already.
One thing I was thinking about, because I know I do this all the time, is if there is kind of a lack of knowledge or a decision is put, solely on a 6, it's amazing how I can argue any side of a question or an issue and not, I can not be tied to one way or the other, but because we, constantly are thinking through things, one day I like it this way, and the next day I'm like, oh, what if we did it this way? Or what if we do it that way? And I know I contradict myself all the time. And I'm sure my team is like, oh my gosh, stop, coming back with more ideas or questions or options. But I'm like, I have to figure them all out so we can figure out what's right. So I know they get so annoyed because it's a little bit, you said, Erin, the what about, and that's just constantly, well, what about this? Or what about this? Thing and get into a leadership role, a lot of that is, your the work of your team is a reflection of you. And so that's where I'm like, but they don't work like I do. And how do I navigate through this constant, work preparation? And nobody works at the same level that I do. But there's like an expectation, unwritten, unspoken. And then you're like, oh, wait, they didn't know that they were supposed to do this. Oh, because I didn't tell them. Oh, because they're different. And then, it's a constant circle. Cause then I'm like, they give me something. I'm like, this is great. What about? And I'm sure they're like, oh my God, stop.
Yeah. When
Stop
is it okay?
Yeah.
When is it okay? Because, and then the next day you could be like, well, I actually don't like this. What if we go back to this? And that was probably the first option to begin. So I think when there is a lack of certainty and support, then I think that's where I know I kind of tend to spin out because I feel like I have to uncover everything.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one that's doing it. So then that's, kind of an internalization of it. So I'm sure it drives people bananas.
No.
And also,
but it's also a superpower.
It is a superpower, and it gives some
superpower.
grace. I think that was one of my favorite things, as I learned the Enneagram, was thinking about it from the lens of speaking to somebody's listening. I think our teacher taught us that. And that's it, right? Like, to know, I do that. I sort of, when I'm the authority on this matter and I have no support and I'm sort of sitting in my own lane doing this work, I am going to question it. And so to add that to the layer of the conversation and give enough space for somebody else to show up in the conversation and support you in that. And hey, Carrie, I see you asking a bunch of questions. Can we talk about why? Are you having some doubts around your decision? Or it just gives some more room to solve the problem, more tools, to build the house. And so just all three of you, I mean, you're clearly my favorite people in the world for a lot of reasons, but you're so authentically who you are and comfortable bringing that forward. And that gives people more ability to meet you where you are. So how do you resource? What sort of serves your, any type, any human, but what serves your 6 in life? What practices, what tools, what things help you show up and be you every day?
Organization, alone time, just send me off in the backyard with a bottle of bourbon and a fire pit full of wood. Let me sit out there and just listen to music or do my thing, go out and organize the garage. Things that I can turn my brain off and be unstructured and have nobody breathing down my neck about what I'm doing and how long it's going to take me to do it.
Carrie, do you know how to turn your brain off?
Do I?
Yeah.
Red wine and a sleeping pill.
Okay. Touche.
So,
I don't think I ever turned mine off.
It's hard.
Dave just talked about having a bottle of bourbon, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't say I was going to drink the whole thing.
Right.
That would be irresponsible.
But it's nice, connecting with friends. I mean, especially during the pandemic. I mean, I had, my kind of like sweet little spot is, a beer on my front porch, on the phone or face to face with a friend, and just, almost even just listening and maybe just asking questions of them, and not really just overthinking, but just kind of connecting. And then physical exercise is amazing if you can, get into your body. It gets you out of your head.
Yep.
You can still be overthinking, but you're kind of focused on like, why does my back hurt, and why are my legs sore, but you can keep pushing your body, and then you kind of just your brain's still going, but you're focused on something internal. You're focused on yourself versus all the outside. I mean, we're still making sure we're not getting like hit by cars if we're running down the street, but there's a sense of a quiet mind when your body's moving, and that's been super helpful.
I need to work on that.
Not running down the street in front of cars?
Well, no, not that, Dave.
Oh.
But just allowing myself to do something physical. I do the stretching stuff, but not nearly enough. But I need to get more physical so that I can, I guess, get more, I don't know, time so that I can process it while working out. And then when it's time to hit the pillow, it's out of my head, because I don't have that.
And when your body's tired, it helps you sleep. And so, that's a big thing. I can fall asleep, but if I wake up at 2:00 in the morning, my brain is instantly going. And so that's hard to quiet it. So when you're physically exhausted, it usually helps me sleep better. So, and that keeps me, a little bit more resilient for the hard work that we have to do every day. I think between Meredith and I, we're not 8:30 to 5. We're kind of in early, they're late. I think we're both doing better jobs of recouping some of our time and taking time off for ourselves. But, we have to be kind of mentally, physically fit to navigate through the changes of every day and the challenges of every day. And so it's hard if you're tired and you just don't do well. So we need our brains to be sharp, so we have to rest them too.
Absolutely. And also, like, there's space for things and there are not space for things. I know, like, in our life, having 2 small kids, it's hard for Dave to go lift weights or run or, like, so you do what you have in front of you. You do what you have the most access to, and you keep sort of stepping to the next thing and the next thing. So I think sharing that, Meredith, and then also what is working for you right now is a great example to people that it's okay to like do, to use Anna's words from Frozen, the next right thing, like what
can't believe
do
you
I
just
have
referenced
access to?
Anna.
I know.
She sure
I know.
did. She sure did, Dave.
I did.
Dave, let it go.
Ping, ping.
I had to.
I've never had thoughts about hurting myself, but after
Until
listening
just
to that soundtrack 1,000 times, I've thought about it.
So Meredith, what is working? What is working?
So what is working? I think times like this. So right now the kids are gone and my husband is working for the night because it's snowing here. And so I will finally have some me time, which is good because I need to be able to unplug a little bit to rejuvenate so that I can continue to pour out. So I need to sometimes retreat. And so this is good for me.
You need to eat Cheetos on the couch in your underwear. That's what I call it.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Did I say that out loud?
Wait a minute.
You did.
Dave, you gave me some really good perspective when you talked about unstructured time, because where I see you is you sort of like want to run into the garage and, sort of putz and organize and like move piles around and like do things. And hearing all of you talk, it sort of gave me some perspective to the brain always working, the brain always seeking. And so finding some ways to use it but in maybe a more restful way. Maybe not always the seeking security or certainty, but yeah, I'm going to move this pile of screws again because it, you know, it uses my brain, but not in the way that is so fatiguing. So I'm going to remember that the next time I get annoyed with you for moving the pile of screws for the 100th time.
Now, this is on record. This is recording.
It
Recorded.
is.
So
It is. It's all grace.
I'm just saying.
When she screams out the back door, "Screw you, Dave," then you were like, "Oh, good, I can do this again."
This is me just unplugging. And I'll say it exactly
I'll throw you
like
back
that.
at Cheetos.
Yep.
Right.
Oh man.
Let me see your fingertips. What color are they?
Well, I love you all dearly, like to the moon and back dearly. And I appreciate your time and your hearts and your shared stories. And I know it will be impactful to other folks who are trying to find their way in this journey and find grace and peace in all that they are, all that's already good and perfect and whole. And then as well as other perspectives and thoughts on how to make more room for other people. So I appreciate you being here and sharing your gifts with me and each other and maybe the 4 people that watch this. And so I love you all. Thank you so much.